Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're taking a trip back in time to the year 2000.
Ooh, the year 2000.
Yeah, back when Y2K was thankfully behind us.
Yeah.
But the dot-com bubble was about to burst.
Right.
And everyone was wondering what amazing tech the future held. We've got a really cool collection of articles here by William L. Weaver, all published in Scientific Computing and Instrumentation in the year 2000.
Yeah, it was a really fascinating time to be following tech.
It really was.
So many things were changing so quickly.
Right.
And these articles give us a great snapshot of what was considered cutting edge back then.
Yeah, we've got articles on everything from data acquisition to digital audio to image capture and even transponders.
It's like a time capsule of tech from the dawn of the millennium.
It is. It is. So get ready for some serious nostalgia and maybe even some surprising insights into how far we've come.
Or haven't.
Or haven't come, right? Okay, let's dive in.
Sounds good.
One article that really grabbed my attention was DQ evolves into informatics, where Weaver argues that scientists were moving beyond just measuring quantities.
Right.
And into this new era where they had to understand these massive complex systems that were just overflowing with data.
It's like they had all the pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
But they needed a new way to put them together.
Exactly.
That's where informatics comes in.
Okay, so what exactly is informatics? I mean, it sounds kind of jargony.
Well, Weaver actually uses a really great analogy to explain it.
Okay.
He compares it to understanding a molecule.
Okay.
You need to look not just at the individual atoms,
Right.
but also its structure and how it functions as a whole.
Right.
And it's kind of the same with data.
I see.
Scientists were realizing that they had to integrate data from tons of different sources to really get the full picture.
So it wasn't just about collecting data,
Mm-hmm.
but about actually extracting insights from it.
Exactly.
Like how we use data analytics today, right?
Yeah, exactly. Think about things like personalized medicine, where your unique genetic data is used to tailor treatments, or the rise of AI and machine learning,
Right.
where algorithms are sifting through mountains of data to make predictions and decisions.
Yeah, mind-blowing.
I know. It all goes back to this shift toward informatics that Weaver was talking about.
It's like these seemingly niche ideas from the past have become so central to our lives now.
Yeah, it's really amazing to see how it's all evolved.
It is. Okay, so let's move on to another article that caught my eye.
Okay.
Distributed data acquisition.
Oh, yeah.
It talks about the challenges of getting signals from all these different sensors to a central computer.
Which might seem pretty basic today.
Yeah, with Wi-Fi and everything, right?
Right, but back then, even transmitting data across a factory floor was a major hurdle.
I guess I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. Weaver describes how communication protocols were evolving from simple copper wires to the emergence of Ethernet and faster protocols like MXI3.
Hold on, rewind a sec.
Sure.
What's MXI3?
It stands for Multi-System Extended Interface.
Okay.
And it was this really fast communication protocol specifically designed for high-speed data acquisition systems.
Okay.
It's like, imagine a highway for data with multiple lanes, allowing information to flow much faster.
Got it.
Yeah.
So they were basically laying the groundwork for the Internet of Things.
Exactly.
All these sensors talking to each other, sending data back and forth.
It really was ahead of its time.
Now, here's a funny thought. In 2000, the biggest hurdle wasn't actually the network speed.
Oh, really?
It was figuring out what to do with all that data.
Right. Too much data.
Sounds familiar, right?
Yeah. It's like that feeling when your inbox explodes and you're drowning in emails, but instead of emails, it was mountains of data.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got this shift toward informatics and this evolution of data acquisition happening.
Yeah.
What other kind of technological gems did Weaver uncover in the year 2000?
Well, let's talk about audio, shall we? Weaver's article, Do You Hear What I Hear? Digital audio storage formats, takes us back to the golden age of CD audio.
Ah, yes.
But it also hints at a new format that was on the horizon that was ready to kind of shake things up a little bit.
CD players.
Oh.
Remember putting that shiny disc in the tray and hoping it didn't get scratched?
Oh, absolutely. I remember those days.
Good times. Good times.
Yeah.
But okay, so what was this new format that was coming out?
Well, it's called Super Audio Compact Disc, or SACD audio for short.
Okay.
Basically, Philips and Sony were pushing the limits of audio fidelity.
Okay.
They wanted to achieve higher quality and dynamic range than what CD audio could offer.
Right.
The key difference was they switched from the standard PCM used in CDs to a new process called DSD, or Direct Stream Digital.
So they were basically trying to create a higher resolution listening experience.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like going from standard def to HD for your ears.
Exactly. But of course, this cutting-edge tech came with a hefty price tag.
Of course it did.
SECD players back then were about 30 times more expensive than CD players.
Wow. Okay, that makes you appreciate how technology becomes more affordable over time.
It really does.
Speaking of advancements, let's talk about analog to digital converters, or ADCs.
Okay.
It's Weaver's article, If at First, the Successive Approximation Register.
Oh, yeah.
And he uses this really interesting analogy to explain how they work.
His analogy of a doctor's office with 256 scales is brilliant.
It is.
It really helps to illustrate how all the different ADC types work.
Right. He talks about successive approximation,
Yeah.
flash, subarranging flash,
Yeah.
and sigma delta ADCs.
Each with its own pros and cons.
Right, in terms of speed, resolution, complexity, cost.
So many factors to consider.
Absolutely. What really stood out to you as the most important breakthrough?
Well, one notable advancement was National Semiconductor's subarranging flash ADC.
Okay.
This technology dramatically increased sampling rates,
Okay.
which paved the way for even faster data acquisition.
So faster data acquisition means being able to capture more data points in a shorter time, which means more detailed measurements.
Exactly.
But what does that actually mean for like a regular person?
That's a great question. Think about medical imaging, for example.
Okay.
Faster data acquisition means clearer, more detailed images, which can help doctors make faster and more accurate diagnoses.
Right. Okay.
Or think about scientific experiments where being able to capture those really rapid changes is essential. Faster ADCs allow scientists to observe those changes with much greater detail.
Got it. So it's not just about the speed itself,
Right.
but what that speed actually enables.
Exactly. And this was just a stepping stone toward even more sophisticated ADC technologies that play such a huge role in our tech today.
Right. Like it seems like a never-ending quest for the perfect ADC.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So next up, we've got less than picture perfect, digital image capture, where Weaver kind of dives into the world of CCD cameras.
Oh, yeah.
And he contrasts those, picture-perfect images from computational fluid dynamics simulations.
With the much more challenging reality of capturing real-world images.
Yeah, because real-world images are never perfect.
Right. So what were some of the big obstacles they faced back then with CCD cameras?
Well, resolution was certainly a factor, but one key challenge was dealing with the quirks of individual pixels in a CCD array.
Okay.
Weaver talks about this thing called photo response non-uniformity, or PRNU.
Say that 5 times fast.
I know, right?
Okay, so what is it?
Basically, it describes how each pixel can respond a little bit differently to light intensity and color.
So it's like each pixel has its own personality.
Yeah, it does.
And you have to figure out all those little quirks to get an accurate image.
Exactly. Scientists had to develop all these fancy calibration techniques to minimize that impact and ensure accurate image data.
But even with those corrections, there was still some uncertainty in the values captured in an image.
Right.
So how do you actually visually represent that uncertainty?
Right. It's not like you could just slap error bars on a graph.
Right. It's a really interesting question.
It is.
Weaver suggests a few creative possibilities,
Okay.
like incorporating the uncertainty information into the intensity scale or using varying degrees of blur to visually represent the confidence level.
I like that.
Yeah.
Those are some really out-of-the-box ideas.
Yeah, they really were.
It makes you think about all the different ways we perceive information visually.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, but now let's shift gears a little bit to something that underpins all of this,
Okay.
and that's data integrity.
Data integrity, yeah.
We're talking about Weaver's article, 1, If by Land, Data Transmission and Error Correction, right?
Yes, it's a crucial one.
Because as we've seen, data is king, but only if it's accurate and reliable.
You got it. He talks about the crucial role of error correction in making sure that data communication is reliable,
Right.
which was becoming even more important back then as transmission speeds were increasing and wireless channels were becoming more common.
Because things like wireless internet were still pretty new.
Yeah, exactly. Still cutting edge.
So how did they even begin to tackle this problem of making sure data wasn't getting corrupted in transit?
Well, Weaver walks us through a bunch of different techniques, starting with simple error detection methods,
Okay.
like parity bits,
Okay.
which you can think of as a quick check to see if a piece of data is missing,
Okay.
and checksums, which are like a digital fingerprint
Okay.
that verify the integrity of a larger chunk of data.
So those are kind of the basics.
Yeah, the basic.
But I'm guessing things get more complicated as data transmission speeds increase.
Oh, for sure. And that's where those more sophisticated techniques came in.
Right.
Weaver talks about cyclic redundancy check, CRC, Hamming codes, and forward error correction, FEC.
So what do those do?
Essentially, they create a safety net for your data,
Yeah.
making sure that even if some bits get flipped or lost during transmission, the original message can still be reconstructed.
Oh, cool. Like a backup plan for your data.
Exactly. A backup plan.
Making sure that it arrives safe and sound.
Yeah.
Even if it hits a few bumps along the way.
Exactly. And he uses some really relatable examples.
Oh, like what?
Like Bluetooth's error correction methods.
Okay.
To illustrate how these concepts were being applied to real-world systems.
I've always wondered how Bluetooth manages to send data wirelessly without things getting all garbled.
Right. It seems like magic.
It does.
But it's not magic, it's clever engineering.
Okay.
Bluetooth uses this thing called a 5-bit Hamming code to transmit every 10 bits of data.
Wow, okay.
And that code allows the receiver to detect and correct any single-bit errors.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
I know, right?
Especially for a technology that was so new back then.
Yeah, it really is.
It's fascinating to see how these seemingly abstract concepts were shaping the technology we were using every day.
It's true. Even way back in 2000.
Exactly. Okay, so speaking of interconnectedness,
Okay.
or maybe a lack thereof,
Okay.
one challenge that emerges from Weaver's articles is this issue of incompatible file formats.
Oh, yeah, a classic problem.
It sounds like a real headache.
It was. It really was.
Even back then.
In his article, When You Can't Read Your Own Writing, Metamorphic File Formats,
Right.
he talks about how he was struggling to convert image data for analysis because the software he needed to use didn't recognize the file format.
I hate when that happens.
I know, it's so frustrating.
It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Exactly.
So how did they even begin to try and solve this file format fiasco back in the year 2000?
Well, unfortunately, there wasn't really like a universal file format that everyone agreed on,
Oh, bummer.
but there were some promising initiatives.
Okay.
Weaver talks about the emergence of standard file formats like FITS,
What's that?
Flexible Image Transport System, it was mainly for astronomy,
Okay.
and also ANDI and JCAM-DX
Right.
for all kinds of scientific data.
So these were attempts to standardize things.
Yeah, basically they were trying to create some consistency and make sure that different systems could talk to each other, interoperability.
Right.
But as you can imagine, getting everyone on board was a huge challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's like trying to get all the countries in the world to agree on a single language.
Right. Good luck with that.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was like that battle between VHS and Betamax all over again.
Exactly. You got
So there was that tension between vendor lock-in, where companies want to keep users tied to their specific products,
Yeah.
and then interoperability, where data can be easily shared and used across platforms.
Right. A constant tug of war.
Always.
Mhm.
It sounds like the push for universal formats was gaining momentum even back then.
It was. It definitely was.
And that makes sense,
Yeah.
considering how much emphasis Weaver put on data sharing and collaboration.
Right, because he recognized that data is most valuable when a lot of people can actually access it and use it.
Yeah.
This whole idea of open data, where information is freely available, was starting to take root.
And that's something we're still talking about today.
Oh, absolutely. It's a movement that's still gaining traction.
Okay, so before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's look at one last article that captures the spirit of tech innovation in the year 2000.
Okay.
It's Tag You're It. Data acquisition
Yeah.
using transponders,
Oh, yeah.
where Weaver dives into the world of
They're
transponders.
little digital tags that track and identify objects.
Yeah. And well, he starts with examples that were pretty familiar even back then,
Right.
like shoplifting detectors
Yeah, those have been around forever.
and the RFID tags they use at toll booths.
Mm-hmm.
He also kind of hints at this future
Yeah.
where transponders would become even more pervasive
Right. Like everywhere.
and integrated into our daily lives.
Yeah, he was really ahead of his time with that.
Okay, so I have to admit, when I
Yeah.
think of transponders,
Yeah.
my mind just goes straight to those clunky toll booth tags.
Yeah, or like the ones they used to track packages.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Weaver was thinking bigger.
Yeah, he was much
bigger.
Yeah.
He wasn't just thinking of them as passive tracking devices.
Uh-huh.
He was thinking of them as active data collectors
Oh, wow.
embedded in the environment,
Uh-huh.
constantly feeding us information.
It's like giving objects a voice.
Exactly. It is.
Allowing them to tell us their stories,
Uh-huh.
their histories, their current states.
Exactly. Remember those smart appliances he talked about?
Yeah.
The ones that could read clothing tags and adjust the settings accordingly?
Yeah.
That was pretty revolutionary back then.
Yeah, it was. It sounds like he was anticipating the Internet of Things,
He absolutely was.
where everything's connected and communicating and generating data.
He was really ahead of the curve on that one.
He was. And the potential of transponders to like transform the way we interact with the world around us is immense, right?
That's amazing.
From supply chain management to healthcare to environmental monitoring.
It touches everything.
All these little tags are enabling us to gather so much data
Yeah.
and get all these deeper insights into our surroundings.
Yeah, it's like a whole new dimension of understanding. It is. Where the physical and digital worlds are coming together.
Exactly. And that's a vision that's becoming more and more real every day.
It really is.
Isn't it amazing?
It's incredible to think how these like simple devices are playing such a big role in our data-driven world.
Yeah, they really are.
So as we kind of wrap up this first part of our deep dive, I'm struck by how many of the themes we've talked about all kind of point to a bigger trend.
Okay, what's that?
This idea of moving beyond just collecting data to actually making sense of it.
Yeah.
Extracting knowledge and insights from all this information around us.
You're absolutely right. It's not just about collecting the data anymore. It's about understanding it.
Exactly.
And that trend has only accelerated in the years since these articles were written.
Yeah.
We've seen an explosion in data generation and processing power and analytical techniques.
Right.
And that's led to a whole new set of challenges and opportunities.
It really has.
It has it.
Absolutely. So stay tuned, everyone.
Yeah.
Because our journey through the year 2000 is far from over.
We've got more to uncover.
We do.
Stay with us.
Welcome back to our deep dive into tech in the year 2000.
It's amazing how many of the ideas we've talked about are still shaping technology today.
It's true. You know, one concept that keeps coming up is this idea of informatics.
Right. Weaver really emphasized how scientists were moving from just collecting data to actually making sense of it.
He really saw it as this fundamental shift.
And it's fascinating how he even predicted that the acronym LIMS might eventually stand for Laboratory Informatics Management System.
Right, instead of just information.
Right.
He was really ahead of his time.
He was. And while the acronym may not have officially changed, the focus on informatics has absolutely exploded.
It has. You know, it's not just about managing data anymore.
Right.
It's about extracting those meaningful insights, making connections that weren't visible before, and using those insights to drive innovation.
So it's like that aha moment when you suddenly see the bigger picture.
Exactly.
See the pattern in all the chaos.
Yeah.
And that sparks all these new ideas.
Exactly. And this shift towards informatics is really woven through so many of the areas we've been discussing.
Right.
Like, take distributed data acquisition, for example. As scientists were able to collect more and more data from all these different sources, they needed more powerful tools to be able to handle it all.
It's like drinking from a fire hose, right?
Exactly.
Suddenly you have access to all this information, but you need a way to filter it and process it and figure out what's actually important.
Exactly. And the same goes for standardizing data formats.
Right.
Remember, Weaver's struggles with those incompatible file types?
Oh, yeah.
Well, informatics plays a huge role in developing those universal languages for data to make it easier to share and analyze and collaborate.
It's like building bridges between those data silos.
Yeah, exactly. Breaking down those barriers so that information can flow freely.
So it's all connected.
It is. It really is.
Okay, so this brings up a really interesting question for me.
Okay.
What were some of the biggest challenges that researchers were facing back in 2000 when it came to informatics?
The great question.
Were they already dealing with things like data overload?
It's interesting.
Or algorithm bias, which we talk about so much today.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine those concerns weren't already on their radar.
Right. And, you know, while those specific terms might not have been in common use back then, the underlying challenges were definitely there.
Yeah.
Weaver talks about the need for what he calls higher-order data acquisition systems to handle these massive volumes of data that were being generated.
So they were starting to feel that big data pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
Even before it had a catchy name.
Even before it had a name, yeah.
Right. And he also emphasized the need for more sophisticated analytical techniques, what we would probably just call algorithms today, to make sense of these really complex systems with all these variables.
Remember that analogy of understanding a molecule?
Yeah.
You know, it's not enough to just know the individual atoms. You have to understand how they interact, that they influence each other.
Exactly.
And that requires these really sophisticated analytical methods.
And those were still being developed back then.
Oh, absolutely. Artificial intelligence and machine learning were just starting to gain traction.
It's crazy how far we've come in such a short amount of time.
It really is, isn't it?
But it's also kind of a reminder
Yeah.
that we're still struggling with some of those same fundamental challenges.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so one area where those challenges are still very present is in this quest for universal file formats.
Right. We're still working on that.
We talked about Weaver's frustrations with incompatible file types.
Yeah.
And it's a problem that hasn't really gone away.
No.
It's like we're still trying to solve that jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
Where some of the pieces just don't quite fit together.
Exactly. And while there have been some advancements in standardization, especially with all the open data initiatives, that dream of a truly universal and interoperable digital world is still kind of out of reach.
Why is that? I mean, it seems like such a fundamental need.
It is a fundamental need.
Especially now with all this collaboration and data sharing.
Right. And there are a lot of factors that play into it.
Like what?
Well, legacy systems, proprietary formats, and just the complexity of the data structures themselves all contribute to that challenge.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about the human element either.
Right.
Resistance to change, concerns about data ownership and control,
Yeah.
even just plain inertia.
Right. People just get used to doing things a certain way.
Exactly. So it's a reminder that technological progress isn't always a straight line.
Right. It's messy.
It is. It zigs and zags and takes detours and runs into roadblocks.
It does. It does.
But despite all of those challenges, I'm still optimistic. We've seen incredible progress in data storage and processing power and analytical techniques.
Right.
And as we move forward, I think that push for open data and interoperability is just going to keep getting stronger.
I hope so.
Yeah.
It would be amazing to reach a point where data can just flow freely across different platforms and disciplines.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, just unleash this wave of collaboration and innovation.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but let's shift gears a bit here
and
talk about something that I think sometimes gets overlooked in all the excitement about new technology.
Okay.
And that's calibration.
Calibration.
Weaver has a whole article dedicated to this topic.
He does, yeah.
Relativistic data acquisition, the importance of calibration.
It might seem a little dry.
Yeah. Why should we even care about calibrating instruments?
Well, it might seem like a technical detail, but it's really the foundation of accurate and reliable scientific measurement.
Okay.
Every measurement we take is relative to some reference point, some standard calibration, is all about making sure that our instruments are actually aligned with those standards so that we can have confidence in the data that we're collecting.
So it's not just about getting a number.
Right.
But about making sure that that number actually reflects reality.
Exactly.
Okay.
Without proper calibration, our data can be skewed.
Right.
Which can lead to all sorts of inaccurate conclusions.
And probably some pretty bad consequences.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, give me an example.
Okay, so imagine a medical device that measures blood glucose levels.
Right.
If that device isn't properly calibrated, it could give readings that are too high or too low.
Right.
Which could lead to incorrect insulin dosages.
Wow.
Which could potentially have life-threatening complications.
Okay, so suddenly calibration doesn't seem so boring anymore.
Yeah. No, it's not boring. It's essential.
It's super important.
Yeah.
Okay, and this emphasis on calibration
goes way beyond medical devices.
It does.
Remember when we were talking about the photo response non-uniformity?
Oh, yeah, with the CCD cameras.
Yeah, with the CCD cameras, right?
Yeah.
Where each pixel has its own little quirks.
It's amazing how even at that microscopic level, calibration is just absolutely crucial.
It is.
And it highlights the fact that calibration isn't a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process.
Right, because instruments age.
They do.
Environmental conditions change.
They do.
New technologies emerge.
Exactly. And we need to constantly be reevaluating and adjusting.
So it's like this constant fine-tuning.
Yeah, exactly.
Constant fine-tuning.
To make sure everything is working in harmony.
Yeah, it's like an orchestra warming up before a performance.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Okay, and this brings us to another crucial aspect.
Okay.
Of ensuring data integrity.
Okay.
Error detection and correction. Right, we touched on it earlier.
We did in the context of data transmission. But it goes way beyond just sending data from point A to point B.
It does. It's everywhere.
It really is. They're like the unsung heroes of the digital world.
Yeah, they are, working behind the scenes.
Make sure everything runs smoothly.
Exactly. And as we talked about earlier, this was a big concern even back in 2000 with the rise of high-speed data transmission and wireless communication.
Yeah, Weaver's article really drove home the importance of error correction.
It did.
It's amazing how much we rely on those techniques without even realizing it.
Yeah.
They're constantly at work, safeguarding our data from all kinds of things.
Think about online banking.
Okay.
Every time you make a transaction, these techniques are ensuring that your financial data is transmitted securely and accurately.
It's like a safety net.
Yeah, a safety net for your digital life.
Our digital lives, right.
Catching all those little bits and pieces that might otherwise slip through the cracks.
Yeah, and as the amount of data that we're generating just keeps growing.
Right, exponentially.
The importance of error detection and correction is just going to keep growing too.
It is. It's only going to become more crucial.
Right.
And it's an area where ongoing innovation is so important.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder what kind of cutting-edge error correction techniques are being developed right now.
I know, right.
But for now, let's get back to our journey through the year 2000.
Okay.
And revisit transponders.
Oh, yeah, those little digital tags that are everywhere today.
Everywhere.
It's fascinating to see how Weaver was envisioning their potential even back then.
I mean, I still think of transponders as those toll booth tags.
Yeah, I know.
Or the ones on packages.
Yeah, it's easy to think of them that way.
Right.
But Weaver was thinking much bigger.
He was.
He saw transponders as more than just passive tracking devices.
Okay.
He saw them as these active data collectors.
Oh, wow.
Embedded in our environment, constantly feeding us information.
It's like giving objects a voice.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Right. So they can tell us their stories, their histories, their current states.
Exactly. Remember those smart appliances?
Yeah.
That could read clothing tags and adjust the settings accordingly?
Yeah.
I mean, that was a pretty radical idea back in 2000.
It was. He was really anticipating the Internet of Things.
He absolutely was.
Where everyday objects are connected and communicating and generating data.
And the potential to transform the way we interact with the world is just huge.
It is. It's like opening up this whole new dimension of understanding.
And yeah, exactly.
Where the physical and digital worlds are really converging.
It's an exciting time to be alive.
It is. It really is.
Isn't it?
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm struck by how all these themes we've talked about, informatics, data acquisition, calibration, error correction, transponders.
Yeah, it's all connected.
It's all connected.
It really is.
And they all point to this bigger trend.
What's that?
This idea of moving beyond just collecting data to actually making sense of it.
Right. Extracting knowledge, insights, actionable intelligence.
Yes. From this sea of information that's all around us.
It's about making sense of the world through data.
It is.
And that trend has just accelerated since Weaver wrote these articles.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen this explosion of data generation and processing power and analytical techniques.
Right.
And that's led to a whole new set of challenges and opportunities.
Which brings us to the final chapter of our journey through the year 2000.
Yes.
Where we'll explore the lasting impact of these early innovations and what they tell us about the future of technology.
Stay tuned as we delve into the legacy of the year 2000.
What it means for our digital world today. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You know, we spent the last two parts exploring the tech landscape of the year 2000.
It feels like a lifetime ago.
It really does.
Doesn't it?
And, you know, all guided by those insightful articles by William L. Weaver. And it has been a real eye-opener.
It has.
It has.
So much was happening back then.
There was. It's amazing how much innovation was already brewing back then.
Yeah. The seeds for so many technologies we use every day were being planted.
I know, right at the dawn of the millennium.
Yeah.
It's like we've been on this archaeological dig.
Yeah.
Uncovering all these tech artifacts and piecing together how we got to where we are now.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
And, you know, what's really striking to me is how Weaver, through his writing, managed to capture both the excitement and the uncertainty.
Right, because it was a really unique time.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was this pivotal moment
right
on the cusp of this digital revolution that would change everything.
And I think it's safe to say it did change everything.
It did, yeah.
In ways that I don't think people could have even imagined back then.
Back then, no.
No. You know, the dot-com bubble was about to burst. But there was also this, like, incredible sense of optimism.
Yeah, there was this real belief.
Right. that the internet and all these new digital technologies held the key to solving so many problems.
Yeah, like we were on the verge of something amazing.
And looking back, it's clear that a lot of Weaver's predictions were spot on.
Yeah, he was really insightful.
He was. His insights into the rise of informatics,
Uh-huh.
the importance of data analysis, the need for standards, interoperability.
Those have all been borne out.
Yeah, absolutely. But he also highlighted those challenges.
Yeah.
Like data overload,
Mm-hmm.
the need for sophisticated data management systems,
Right.
which are even more pressing today than they were back then.
It's incredible how he was already thinking about things like big data and algorithms
Right.
and the Internet of Things.
Like these were already kind of bubbling under the surface.
They were there, just waiting to emerge.
And one thing that really stood out to me was his focus on calibration
Oh, yeah.
and error correction.
He understood that even the most advanced tech
Yeah.
is only as good as the data it produces.
Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Exactly.
You have to start with good data.
You do.
And he knew that accuracy and reliability were just paramount.
Especially as tech gets more complex and interconnected.
Right. It's not just about the individual pieces anymore.
Right. It's about how they all work together.
Yeah.
And making sure the whole system is functioning properly.
that?
It's like a reminder that even in the midst of all this rapid development, we can't lose sight of those fundamentals.
The need for precision and rigorous testing.
Right.
Making sure our instruments are measuring what we think they're measuring.
Yeah, he was a real champion for scientific rigor.
He was, and his work has had a lasting impact on how we develop technology today.
But beyond all those technical details, what I find really inspiring about Weaver's writing is his sense of wonder
Yeah.
about the possibilities of technology. He had this real knack for explaining complicated concepts in a way that was both clear and engaging.
He did. He was a great science communicator.
He was, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He could dive into the nitty-gritty of like a super technical topic,
Mm-hmm.
but also convey its significance, like how it could really impact our lives.
Right. He could see the big picture.
He could. And he understood that technology isn't just about gadgets and algorithms.
It's about people.
Yeah,
Solving problems, advancing knowledge, improving the human condition.
exactly. And I think that's a really important message.
It is.
Technology should be a force for good,
Yeah.
right? A tool for progress and empowerment.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to, I think, a really thought-provoking question.
Okay, I like it.
If Weaver were writing about technology today,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think he would be most excited about?
Oh, that's a good one.
And what would he be most concerned about?
Well, I think he would be absolutely blown away by the progress in artificial intelligence and machine learning
Right.
and data analytics.
He'd probably be amazed by how quickly some of the things he was writing about,
Oh.
like informatics and transponders,
Mm-hmm.
have become so essential to how we live.
He'd be fascinated by the sheer scale and complexity of our digital world.
Right.
Like the massive amounts of data, the intricate networks that connect us, the algorithms that shape our experiences.
Yeah, all of it.
It's mind-boggling.
But I also think he would be concerned about some of the downsides of all this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. The ethical implications of AI,
Mm-hmm.
the spread of misinformation online,
Right.
the digital divide, the erosion of privacy.
Yeah, he was a really thoughtful observer of technology.
He was.
And I think he'd urge us to proceed with caution,
Yeah.
to weigh the benefits of innovation against the risks.
Right. To make sure that technology serves humanity
Exactly.
and not the other way around.
He'd be calling for responsible innovation
Yeah.
for a future where technology is both groundbreaking and ethical.
I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into tech in the year 2000,
Mm-hmm.
it's been a fascinating journey.
It has.
It really has. So many insights
So many.
and thought-provoking discussions.
We've uncovered the roots of the digital age,
We have,
explored the innovations that led to the world we live in today.
and I think gained a deeper appreciation for visionaries like William L. Weaver.
Yeah, people who could see the potential
Yeah.
of what technology could become.
Exactly. So thank you for joining us on this exploration.
We hope you've enjoyed it.
We do. We hope it sparked your curiosity.
About the history and the future of technology.
Yeah. And remember, the best way to prepare for the future is to understand the past.
That's a good one.
Right. So keep exploring,
Keep learning
keep asking questions.
and keep diving deep.
Until next time, knowledge seekers.
Bye, everyone.